Okay, welcome back. This is the second discussion on the trial. I wanted to now move to some ideas of discourse and power. So if you remember, those are sort of ideas associated with Foucault. Last week we had a little look, didn't we, at Panopticon. When I showed you this kind of image here, I think this was kind of a useful way of sort of seeing a three-dimensional representation, literally with this kind of idea of watchtower in the middle and then inmates around the floor, actually not being able to see one another, but seeing the tower there with its kind of spotlights zooming in on you. So there's the handout on Foucault, and also if you look at the handouts, there's some various references to 1984. So if you watch the trailer actually for 1984 with John Hurt, you'll see this scene. And I think it's a very useful scene to kind of look at and see how they've used as representation of the telly screen there as well. So take a look at that, and then compare, if you will, with the trial. So looking specifically at the trial, thinking about how Kay stands in the theatre courtroom, think about those kind of ideas of performance as well. So here we have various kind of movements through the kind of the theatre space and also the kind of the trial space. It's very useful to sort of to look at. So the next clip to see is the second torture scene of Winston. So again, using YouTube, you can find that under second torture scene, O'Brien and Winston. Very, very powerful. And powerful reference as well to the memory hole and the photograph. My reason being, I wanted you to think about these different kind of demonstrations of resistance. So the position that Kay is in, with a kind of a mental torture that he's experiencing, and also Winston's kind of physical torture. So just play out there some of those ideas of resistance and also language in particular. So using these kind of ideas, these pointers and extracts on Foucault, thinking about how discourse is created, how language is sort of fed through the meanings of the dominant in particular. In doing so, you'll see this kind of difference really between the Inquisitor, so the various law characters that Kay inhabits and sort of comes across, and also then in 1984 through the character of O'Brien and through the character of Big Brother, who's kind of further back, but we kind of see his image quite a lot. You have this kind of dialectic between, or an ambivalence between these two characters. So the Inquisitor and then what's termed sort of the underground man. The differences, if you like, between the powerful and the powerless there as well. So this is quite a long quotation, but I think it's quite useful to think about this kind of distribution of power, the way in which the underground man or the little man tries to or attempts to kind of fight back, and that ultimately he's crushed by this, the mechanism, if you like, of this kind of totalitarian regime. Orwell's inspiration for the Ministry of Truth, Ministry you can see here, is Senate House in London, where he actually worked during the war. And I think it's useful to kind of think of that kind of figure, that Big Brother type figure then, as kind of Inquisitor in particular. So I think it's useful to kind of compare then this kind of character with the various kind of characters that we get in the trial in particular. And a crucial moment then in the film is Kay's compassion that he demonstrates for the people who've invaded his privacy. So the various kind of power structures, that's probably one of the few times where he is actually powerful in that sort of sense. So I think it would be useful to spend a little bit of time just, having a think about that, thinking about some of the ambiguities that he himself demonstrates there. So focusing in on this section in particular, I think will help. However, Going back again to your ideas for your own screenplay, I think it would be very interesting if you are experiencing this kind of dystopian world and you've got a character who's being sort of run down, then actually, you know, sort of thinking about this notion of the Grand Inquisitor versus the Underground Man can be a very profitable exercise. So you probably want to spend, again, a good sort of 20 minutes exploring those ideas. If that's not for you and that's not something that you're wanting to think about, then by all means it would be nice to kind of focus in on the changed ending. So thinking about the end of sort of Kafka's novel. It's an accessible text. You'll find it for a few pence actually to be sort of downloaded if you've got a Kindle reader or onto your iPad. So have a little look at the end. Although you have the destruction of Kay through Kafka, here you have Orson Welles changing the ending, and preventing him from being broken, if you like. So if you remember that very, very strange ending to the film where the knife is sort of passed forwards and backwards because they're unable to actually kind of finally destroy him, so you have this acute moment of humour. So I think rewatch that kind of final scene, and if you're able, have a look at the end of Kafka's novel, and see what you think about that change. And again, it's a change that we kind of experienced last week when we were looking at V for Vendetta, the changed ending of the sort of the graphic novel. So again, you can kind of explore these ideas of fidelity here. Okay, and again, that's quite a large exercise, so I'd be saying again another sort of 20 minutes, half an hour to be sort of thinking about that. I'm going to end the broadcast, if you like, now, but if you want to kind of move on through the PowerPoint, there's just a couple of other ideas that might interest you, so please, by all means, in your own time, you know, take a little look at that. If you've got any questions about Kafka or about the trial or anything you'd like to ask me, please do get in touch, or drop in and see me in one of my office hours.